Steve is gonna, I'll be the coach and Steve will be leading the agenda today.
Put me in, coach.
Great.
And we'll all make our way forward. Why don't we start with introductions, since I think we have a pretty good group here considering it's almost the holidays, and like you said, a couple people have had emergencies. So I'll start with me. Of course, I'm the coach for this committee, and I have been an elected official, both a mayor and a county commissioner. I ran for Congress unsuccessfully and have been working with the Carter Center since 2021. We did a lot of work in the 2022 elections, mostly town halls and civic education, trying to help people understand that our system is fair, safe, and secure, and there are lots of checks and balances, but we still need to do more of that. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to working with all of you, and hopefully you will become semi-autonomous so that your leads, who are very skilled in the whole area of cybersecurity, can really shepherd it along. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve, who is one of the co-leads.
Okay, thanks, Jen.
Steve Tate. And I'm in Charlotte.
Yes. So I am here in Greensboro with Mary Ellen, I guess.
Yes, that's right.
I am faculty at UNC Greensboro. I've worked in computer security and cybersecurity for a lot of years now. I went to school at Duke, went off to Texas and lived in Texas for 14 years, which is about 12 years too long. Came back to North Carolina. Happy to be back. Actually, I say happy to be back. I've been back 17 years now, so it's not like I just got back. I am the guy that's more comfortable sitting in the back room tearing the machines apart and trying to figure out how to break them and patch the holes than I am with the rest of the election process. But I hope one of the things that I can do here is take some of the issues that might be esoteric and bring in some experts I know, and hopefully put things in language that everybody is comfortable with and everybody understands. So that's me. Or do we have an order to go in here?
Great. Why don't you pass it off to somebody else?
All right, Mary Jo, how about you go next? You're muted though. There we go.
So
Good.
I'm
There we go.
you got it. Okay. I'm Mary Jo McGowan. I'm a professor in political science at UNC Charlotte. And whereas Steve has, I guess, a little bit of expertise in elections, my entire expertise is in election administration and campaign finance. So my colleagues and I are just read a book all about election administration, and that's my whole area of research. So I love looking at elections, and I was really interested in this because I went to the Trusted Elections tour, and it heard, I think it was Tori Cross speak about cybersecurity and the elections. And I was like, oh, that's fascinating to me. Cybersecurity is something I know very, very little about. I know that my son majored in it in college, and that's the extent of my knowledge. So, I'm really here to learn more about how the cybersecurity of elections works and what we need to do to make them more secure. So I'm really excited to learn more.
Great. And I'll say quickly before you pass it on to someone else, Tori Cross has made himself available. He was the cyber expert for the Board of Elections last year. He is now Chief Risk Officer for the state of North Carolina in the cyber field. So Mary Jo, pass it off to somebody else.
Let's go with Mary Ellen.
Okay, well, as Steve pointed out, I'm here in Greensboro with him. I come from Louisiana, and I was a political science major for undergraduate, and always had a bit of an interest in the both history and politics. My first husband was a state senator in Louisiana, and I was, active in campaigns and saw the whole process up front and close. Then my second husband moved me here when he took over as the head of the library school at UNCG, and here, by that time, I had I had a degree in information technology, and I'm on the user end. I'm the total opposite of Steve. I'm working with the people who are trying to make sense of what they're trying to do, and the interest in politics didn't go away. It was very different here in North Carolina from Louisiana, but I was still very interested. And Jennifer is the only one on this call that I know, and I know her from the Carter Center town halls, because at that time I was in the midst of a 17-month stint as the president of the League of Women Voters here in Greensboro. With the League, I worked on the Fair Elections Roundtable. The primary work we did was in reference to gerrymandering, but of course, everything that these committees are doing comes under fair elections. And when the invitation came to join this, I thought it gave me an opportunity to learn more myself, but also to bring what I learned here back to the group I'm working with, because it can inform them. And what we do in the League is educate voters. And the more we know, the better chance we have to reach people, not in big presentations, but in all of the encounters that we have as we register people to vote, as we answer questions that people have. So I thought this could be a good thing. I don't know how much I can contribute to you all, but I know that I can take what we're doing and use it. So that's my whole purpose here.
Great. And pass it on to someone else.
Let's see, Ted.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. My name is Ted Stilley, and I am new to North Carolina. My family moved here from Alaska this summer. I was invited to participate in the commission, but I gotta say I have a little bit of imposter syndrome. I think maybe what is most relevant for me, I spent my life in the military before moving here. I have been a registered voter, I think in 9 different states. So I kind of understand the dynamic of moving from place to place and having to learn new systems and new sets of laws. I think maybe some of the perspective that I bring also is that in Alaska, in a relatively young state, they were, I should say, still trying to figure out elections processes in a pretty unique environment. And what I saw over the last 6 years was a pretty dramatic shift in the way that elections are conducted, and the reluctance of the citizenry to embrace that until there was a really effective communications campaign that educated voters in the way that Mary Ellen suggests. And what that resulted in was a lot of satisfaction in the way that the last election went. There was certainly a very verbal minority who are unsatisfied with it, but generally the voters asked for a change in the elections process and were rewarded with a change. I think my imposter syndrome is I do not have a political science or elections background, nor do I have a cybersecurity background per se, but I think it might be germane to this group to say that in my military career, I worked in very opaque career fields and in mission sets that had zero transparency. And there was a great challenge in taking technology solutions and communicating them well to the users. So in this case, I suppose the parallel would be making sure that the users of a voting system that will be more and more dependent on computer systems and ensuring that people have confidence in the fact that they work without necessarily understanding the nuts and bolts of the way that they work. So I hope I'm able to provide some of that to this group.
Thanks, Ted. And I was smiling because I think one of Santa's elves was wandering around your background for a little bit there.
She may not be the only one who does, so apologies.
All right, we got two left, Brad and Tony.
I guess I'm supposed to choose. So Brad, you're the frame under me on my computer screen. So go for it.
Okay, well, thank you very much. My name is Brad Young. I'm with the North Carolina Institute of Political Leadership. Prior to being in this role, I was with the state auditor's office for about 3 years, and then with the state treasurer's office for about 3 or 4 there. So I've got to enjoy about the last decade in state government. And one of the things that really drew me to this committee in particular, in the auditor's office, we had a tip line and would regularly get these kinds of accusations or anything that you might want to classify them as. So it was always something that I was interested in, looking into election data. Can't say that I bring a ton of technical expertise or anything along those lines, but I thought it was particularly important to be a part of this effort, just because the credibility of our elections as we modernize, as we get to a new, that technology starts to intertwine and starts influencing the way that we hold our elections. That's a consistent education effort. Credibility isn't something that you just arrive at overnight. It's something that you have to continue to develop. And I want to make sure that I understand the process and also can reflect some of the things that I've heard from people who are candidates or party officials, and hopefully represent some of those things. Might not agree with them necessarily, but at least understand some of where they're coming from and how they approach a lot of the issues that this committee will be taking on. So thank you so much for allowing me to be part of it. And just want to also, I think the only thing I forgot to include is I'm in Raleigh now, from Onslow County originally, but have lived in Raleigh for almost 20 years now.
Great. And Tony, I know you as Tony, but you've got William on your screen. So which do you go?
Yeah, I'll change that. That's my grandson's been using this. How about that?
Oh.
Yeah.
Everybody's going like, who's Tony?
So let's see, rename. Thank you for pointing that out. So Tony Almeida, and I am retired from Duke Energy, and after the retirement, spent 7 years as a state lobbyist. First, before I did that, after retirement from Duke Energy, I worked for 15 months in the governor's office in North Carolina in Raleigh. And then for 7 months, I was a lobbyist for the North Carolina Research Campus in Kannapolis, and retired from that last year. Now, my wife and I spend a lot of time with our 7 grandchildren. I think I got on this committee because I audited 5 classes at Catawba College with Michael Bitzer, and really think the world of Bitzer, who's one of the leaders of this this great process and program. And so I just want to say, first of all, I am not an IT expert at all. I'm not very literate at all in information technology. I do have a great interest in politics. And I'm really glad to be on this committee because I have a great interest in voter ID. So just let me put that out there to begin with. But very excited to be on this and look forward to learning a lot and contributing in any way I can. So, and Jennifer Roberts, great to see you again after working together for years in Charlotte. So thank you.
Absolutely. Great to see you too. And I think we have a wonderful mix of skills and experiences. And so those of you who think you need to have a technology degree, you don't. Because part of what we want to help the average voter understand is why they can trust the cybersecurity checks and balances we have in place. And so regular people who don't understand, the ones and zeros, that's great, because we want to have that perspective in this as well. It's all about restoring or ensuring confidence in our system and helping folks understand it. A lot of stuff is very opaque. And, as a candidate many times, I never thought about what happened to my ballot after it left, my hand or the touch screen. I didn't really think about it, but it's become much more of an issue of late. So, with that, Steve, I don't know if you want to take over the agenda. I can briefly just say what's there. I know everybody got a copy, but we want to sort of talk about different topics within cybersecurity. Voter ID is one of those. There may be some of these topics that overlap into other committees, and that's fine. We also want to talk a little bit about a meeting schedule in 2024, days of the week that people are, better or worse for people. And maybe any reading over the holidays. Steve might have some ideas there. And then, again, this is the introductory beginning meeting. And the last thing is, thinking about how we want to have public input, but we don't have to decide that today. So, Steve, I don't know what order you want to take it in. So go for
I have some questions specifically for you, actually, as we get started in this. Largely, what's our end goal with this? Is each group writing a set of recommendations? Are we trying to pull the groups together to have sort of best practices or recommendations from the entire commission? What's our product?
So one of the things that there's a shared Google Drive that you all got a link to. We'll send it again, don't worry. But one of the things in there is a template for the final report that each committee will put together. And basically it's, what was your methodology? I mean, you guys who are academics will, this will be usual for you. What was your methodology? What are your findings? And we don't have any preconceived idea about whether our system is the greatest in the country or whether we are lacking in our security measures or where we end up. Maybe we don't have enough public education about whatever. So what are the findings? And also part of that will be, what did you find that the public feels about this topic or these series of topics? And some folks might want to do surveys, some folks might want to do some focus groups, some folks might want to have a town hall, and committees. And I think each one may be a little different, and that's because we want it to be driven by the commission and by folks who know a little bit about where we're going, but that format we will send you will help you figure out what that end goal is. And we don't know what the findings will be. Your findings may be, hey, we got a great system, let's stick with it, right? You also, in your methodology, you may say, I hear that Colorado has a great election system, let's just look at it. I hear that there's one state that does everything online. I don't know if that's true or not, but if there is, how do they do it? How do they make it secure? Is that something we could ever do? Whichever way you want to go on those topics. Generally, we talk about a series, maybe that there are 8 or 9 main areas, and maybe, one person's kind of responsible for figuring out, what are the major questions there. Of course, the first thing you're going to want to do is read Section 163 of the North Carolina Constitution, General Statutes, the general statutes, because that's where election law is spelled out. And Mary Jo probably knows all about that and can probably give some guidance on which parts of that. Mary Jo.
Yep.
Well, I was just going to point out too that the North Carolina State Board of Elections has a whole section on cybersecurity that just looking over that talks about the different audits and how they, it's very general right now. I think it could be more specific, but it does kind of go over the generalities of the threats to cybersecurity and then what they do to protect against it. Obviously, they don't want to spell out everything, right? Otherwise, they'd be telling everybody their secrets, but there's some really good stuff out there.
Yeah,
we-
I thought as far as the laws go, I thought the person that was there from North Carolina Board of Elections in October, I thought he was really good. And I don't know if he or someone there specializes in these particular issues that could come talk to the group. But that would be good.
I agree. Thank you.
As far as other contacts, I don't know what other experts or people that we could bring in. I know Jennifer mentioned Tori, who James and I both discussed, but neither one of us have gotten around to communicating with yet. So I think that's a really good person. I think people with experience in the actual polling places. I don't know, James has some of that. Actually, maybe I'll say I don't know my co-chair a whole lot, James, but I know him a little bit. And since he's missing, I'll point out we have talked a few times, and his background, he has a pretty solid military background. He's been involved in some community work around vets voting, and he has worked at the polls in Wake County. So I don't know if anybody else has any experience at the polls, but I think that's an important part for this group to look at too.
Absolutely. Mary Ellen?
Jennifer, at the town hall in Greensboro, I don't remember who the young man was, but someone spoke that night about cybersecurity, and I thought it was excellent. I don't know if you have a record of that, but he might be someone that could speak with us. I don't remember where it was from. I just remember how informative I found the presentation.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. We can give you a list. We have the names and emails for all the people who appeared. We had a professor from NC State who actually is not there anymore. But we did have some county CIO, chief information officers.
Well, it wasn't county. I knew everyone else on the program but him.
Okay. Okay.
Then I forgot who he was. So.
And then we had Tori and some others, but yeah, we can get those to the committee for sure.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. And Tori might be a good person to start with. You might think about maybe scheduling him for a Zoom in January. Think about, those of you who are new to the state or new to the topic, think about the things you hear from friends, neighbors, constituents, whatever, about why they don't trust computers or why they think it's unsafe. What kind of questions come up from voters. That's always a good place to start as well. And Steve, you're right. James has a background in the military of getting ahead of misinformation and disinformation, which is also connected to cybersecurity because of cyber attacks with false information, with bots who are trying to change outcomes or get bad information out there by repeating it. So that's all really interesting as well.
Okay. The other part, and we can go through this list of possible topics and see what people are particularly interested in or have connections to. When I think of the process, I think of how machines that we use are certified and systems are certified. And there's a group that does that in the state that I think would be interesting to talk to. I think Tori's background, if I understood that correctly, was more on the enterprise system side of things, where he was maybe maintaining the voter rolls and the voter registration. But certifying machines, how they're sort of the chain of custody of the actual hardware and the machines and the ballots through the polling day. And there's another group, I guess, for election day security or election day processes that we might want to coordinate with on that. And then audit, post-election audit. I know that Brad mentioned audit, but I think your audit was more of financial audits. Is that right? Okay. So, you know, in election security, we talk about risk limiting audits, which are really statistical audits, where they try to get enough of a statistical sample to have confidence that the results haven't been tampered with. So that's I think it's a fairly different kind of audit, but I don't know, Brad, if you had any experience with that. I see Mary Jo has her hand up too. So
Yep. Mary Jo?
Yeah, I was just going to say that in North Carolina, there's about, I think there's 5 or 6 different kinds of audits that we do at the end of every election. And then North Carolina is testing the risk limiting audit in just a couple of places in North Carolina in this next year. And so they're taking cues from, I believe it's Georgia and a couple of other states that have implemented the risk limiting audit. And that's kind of like the way that the election folks, the administrators are going, is to look at these risk limiting audits to see any problems, etc. Although we really don't find that many problems in elections, quite honestly. So,
right.
Well, and there's also the random, is that, I'm not familiar with the term risk limiting, but there's a random audit of 3 precincts in every county after every election. And I guess that's, yep.
Yeah, so that's a like the random audit, but then the risk limiting is going to pull ballots from all over the state. And like do it very randomly and statistically, versus like somebody saying, hey, precinct 69 in Charlotte and precinct 200 in Wake County, you know, I mean, instead of just someone choosing those ones, they're going to do it through statistics.
And we don't do that yet.
We
Okay.
there, yeah. Mary Jo was saying sort of what we do now, which is a random sample. But I think when people use the term risk limiting audit, and there are a bunch of states that are moving to this now. It's kind of the gold standard for statistical significance.
That's great. See, we already have a possible recommendation.
Well, and to give a little more detail on what I was talking about with the auditor's office, in particular, the questions that we were being asked on our tip line, there is a investigative arm of that's not necessarily the financial audits. I mean, the worst that you could get is probably a handoff to the SBI. But the issue that we got in particular after the 2018 election was just a differentiation of election night data versus what was available 2 months later. And there was a cloud migration that the board underwent, and that an election night data disappeared. So people start to ask questions when those sorts of things happen. So it's not necessarily exactly what we're talking about with risk limiting or looking at in particular precincts or anything along those lines. But certainly that's an education effort where people pay attention to those sorts of things and are digging into the minutia. And you're also going through a very tumultuous climate for a lot of institutions that might be upholding those kinds of elections or hosting those kind of elections. So I think to be able to get ahead of that, as opposed to having to really dig into it the way that we did without really getting to a satisfactory explanation, I think some of that might have been, again, could have been helpful on the front end, as opposed to having to ask so many questions and get so many calls on our tip line about that particular issue.
Well, you're going to be really a great resource for the things that people don't understand.
Well, chiefly being I don't understand things. So that's usually where it starts, right?
Absolutely. So the other part of coming up with the recommendations is helping people understand what's in place now, and what will be governing the 2024 elections. What do we have in place? What kind of audits do we have? How safe are those? How much better could we be without casting any doubt on what we're doing now? It can always be better, but part of this is public education. And again, having accurate information, not rumors and misinformation.
So I think one of the things we do need to talk a little bit about is how we schedule meetings for next year. So maybe we'll go ahead and talk about that a little bit. I think every other month was the goal for this group to meet originally. Is that what we had talked about? General meeting every other month. Right. So I don't know if people have particular days of the week you want to use or avoid. I think beginning and ending of weeks, I think usually works best for people, either a Monday or a Friday. I would, depending on if we can come up with times or not, I'm willing to consider a weekend day, but I'd really rather avoid that if we possibly can. So I think I would just throw out, say, Friday is a meeting day to see what people thought about that. Or Monday.
Some people have class schedules. Mary Jo. Yeah. Mary Ellen?
Friday's worst case for me, Steve. That's probably the day that I would be least likely to be available.
Which is what, Friday?
Friday, yeah.
Ah,
Monday's
okay.
okay. Tuesdays and Thursdays are great. Wednesdays is not good. Wednesdays are not good. I mean, I was an English major. I don't know where that came from.
Okay.
I'd echo Tuesdays and Thursdays, and our program host sessions on Friday, so I probably wouldn't be able to attend most of the day.
Okay, I made a bad guess then on Friday.
Tuesdays and Thursdays work for me too. Thank you.
Okay.
Fridays are great for academics.
Fridays are great for academics. I can do Tuesday and Thursday as long as it's not in the middle of the day. It would have to be, I think, 4 o'clock on a Tuesday or a Thursday.
Hold on a second. I just have to look at my class schedule really quick. I have class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But I can't remember when it is.
Me too.
The other thing to remember is if one of your meetings is going to be a Q&A session with someone like Tori Crass, these meetings are all recorded. And if you miss, and it's mostly, question and answer, you can listen to it later. They'll be reading, of course, in between the meetings. And then, when it comes to June, you need to get your draft report by the end of June. You are going to, kind of try to have a consensus on what goes into it. So whether that's voting or whether that's, and we're not talking about a 20-page report, right? Because, we're not getting into the minutia to that level. Sometimes it's hard to, the other thing is that every county has slight differences in how they administer elections. But we will, give you guidance along the way as we are looking at the amount of material out there and the best practices, et cetera, as well. So, anyway, don't feel like if you miss a meeting, don't feel like, it's the end of the world, because things will be recorded.
Yeah, I could do Tuesday and Thursday as long as it's later in the afternoon.
Yeah, I'm freed up on Tuesdays and Thursdays after about 4.
That would work.
I mean, we did this Thursday at 4. If that
Kind of like today, yeah.
Yeah, that works.
And I'm living very much in the world of a stay-at-home parent right now, so I'm kind of on my children's schedule. So I may take some of those meetings on a cell phone in the parking lot at a game or practice. So as long as you're patient with me, I'll reduce the crowd noise in the background, but I'll give my full attention wherever it's from.
Okay.
Just mute yourself when they're scoring a goal, right?
Now, does anybody have people that they would like to talk to, or topics that you would like to seek out experts on to address this group?
I had one that immediately came to mind, and that was Josh Lawson. Josh was, I believe, general counsel for the Board of Elections for North Carolina. And then he went over to work for Meta or Facebook for a few years. And now he's with the Aspen Institute, but has some North Carolina familiarity clearly, and also understands a lot of the larger tech issues that are going on with elections. And I think would be a good person to be able to ask some questions of.
Okay.
So I don't really have a person, but the question that I get asked in class all the time is people hacking into the voter database, and like, how does that work, and what kind of protections we have against that kind of threat. I don't see people so worried about the voting machines as like the voter database. And I guess there's this famous experiment where somebody set up a bunch of voting machines and hackers got into them really fast, but it's like not a really good example. And I would like to better understand the technological aspect of why that's not really doable. You can tell I don't know anything about cyber technology, right?
Well, the good thing about North Carolina is almost all the counties use machines that just
Can't.
sort of make that a non-issue, right? So when I first moved back to North Carolina in Guilford County, we used touchscreen machines to vote. We got rid of those, thankfully. Now it's all hand-marked ballots that are sent through tabulators. And the good thing about that is I think it's really easy for people to understand. I marked my ballot, it goes into this locked box, and the machine is just counting, and we can go back and do an audit if we need to. So I think that's the good news. I think there are some counties that use the ballot marking devices. I think Mecklenburg does.
We do, yeah.
Yeah. But I think you're right. I think the registration systems, and there were issues within the past 5 years of some pretty significant probes or attacks of the voter registration systems. And so I know less about how those work, but I'm hoping that's what Tori is going to know about.
I'm listening to Mary Jo's comment. I wonder if part of our responsibility when we report this out with recommendations is to maybe as much or less so even than the technological solutions or the technology solutions that would be recommended, is how to address the misgivings, misinformation, or rumor mill that may prevail about the way that the technology works currently. And so maybe part of what we do is collect some of those tropes and be able to address them at the front end. And part of the recommendation would be that I know that there's another group, I think there's another group that's addressing the voter education campaign,
Right,
but
yeah.
maybe part of our input to them is these are the top 3 concerns that seem to prevail in voters' minds who are wary of the security of our systems. And these are the systems that are already in place that we're already using, or these are the changes that could be implemented to address those concerns. So just sort of collecting what the current temperature is might be part of our responsibility as well.
I think so. Mary Ellen, you have.
I agree totally with Ted. When I talked about my degree, I said information technology, but a very major part of my work with that degree as I taught was with the misinformation and the disinformation. And so much of what's going wrong right now is social media's ability to disseminate misinformation on a scale that has never happened before. I mean, there's always been misinformation, but not on that scale. And I do think that needs to be in the background of everything that we do, that we need to be certain that we try to develop a way to get the accurate information to people. It's not just, getting the accurate information, but spreading the accurate information, because the inaccurate information is being spread very effectively at the moment, to put it mildly.
Yeah, that would be a great way to coordinate with the civic education group. Absolutely, to
Right.
let them help with educating folks about the computer technology. And I have to say that part of that, because it's so much in the news right now, is artificial intelligence. And it would be great if, I don't know, Steve, if you know anybody who's an expert there, because people have questions like, how do I know that when I see a video that where Biden is speaking, that it's really Biden and not something that somebody made up out of artificial intelligence, right? How do I know that, what the State Board of Elections is putting out or what they're saying is really what they're saying? So it has a lot of people very spooked.
Right. Yes, I do know people that work in that area. I'm afraid the answers are not very comforting. But
Maybe we don't want to say that then.
right. And one of the things that when he was talking, I was thinking sort of if we gather input, public input at some point, putting together a document that's almost like a frequently asked questions or a common areas of concern, and not try to give sort of an encyclopedic result, but here's 3 things. Here's why you don't have to worry about hackers with voting machines. Here's why, things
Yeah,
like that.
it's super helpful. I gave a talk earlier this semester about just about elections, and just talking about the audits that are done. Nobody knows that we do audits. And when you tell people that there's 5 different kinds of audits, they're like, oh, we must be doing pretty good. And it's an eye-opening experience for people. They just don't know. So just any kind of information we can get out there is going to really be helpful.
And another area that may have some crossover with other groups, because there's a election day procedure group as well. But it is, I remember Tori saying this quite a bit, that the reason no one's going to hack into something is because the procedural methods that are used to have people looking at different stages of the process and checking it, humans checking it and rechecking it, and finding something that doesn't fit, they look it up, they make it provisional, whatever. That's also part of working around the computer technology piece.
Right.
So I had to figure out, it again, that intersects with kind of election day procedures, but it's something that this group could look at.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of it that deals with the machine security is talking about why we don't need to rely on the machine security. So, all right, what else are we supposed to be doing? Let me go back to my agenda.
The only thing that I think we haven't talked about is the way we want to get public input. So obviously there are different ways. You can do surveys, you can do focus groups, you can do a town hall, you can do several town halls. Lots of options.
What was your experience with the town halls? Because you did that recently.
We did, and we'll be doing those again, but we won't be doing them until August and September. We hope that more counties do them on their own, because it is really helpful to have people in that county listening to their own election director and their own board of election members say, well, I remember in Mecklenburg, having Carol Williams and Mary Suma say, well, we don't agree on anything in terms of ideology, but every time we see a provisional ballot, we agree like 99.9% of the time. Like, that is so powerful for people to hear from the people who are doing the election, the ballot counting, and verifying. So we will be doing that again in the fall. What we found from those we surveyed was that there was an 8% boost in confidence. And we had deniers and skeptics come to these as well and answer the questions, because many of them said, oh, it's all propaganda. But for those who were listening, there was an increase in confidence. Like you said, that, they didn't know we did audits at all. They didn't know we did hand-eye recounts. They didn't know a lot of the things that were uncovered in those town halls. But they do take some planning. You have to get the panel and get the, advertising out there and get people there. And if you're doing it statewide, how do you make sure rural and urban voices are heard? So I'll have to find out whether we have money for polling from the Carter Center from Catawba. We are going to try to get some of the groups that do the Elon College and others that do polling. We're going to try to get a few questions added to their polling. So if there's like a particularly, salient question that you all want to have added to a poll, that could be one way as well.
Actually, I think that's an excellent way to go about this. I think the town halls are pretty heavyweight to organize and start up, and I think that they probably are more successful in population centers, whereas with polling, maybe you could get input from more rural counties. I don't think sticking a survey on a website is very helpful, unless there's a way to drive people to that. But still, I think it's an unreliable sample. So I think if there's a way to add to sort of public sentiment polls in North Carolina, something like that, just 1 or 2 questions. What are your main concerns? I think that would be great. I don't have any other great suggestions. I don't know what other people think.
Yeah, and maybe if there's a multiple choice kind of question around cybersecurity that you all could think of and craft. And then we can share that with Elon and others and see if they can get it added, because they're going to be doing a lot of polling in the next 3 or 4 months. Brad, I don't know if you work with any groups that do polling.
Martin Kiefer from High Point has done some polling sessions for us in the past. We've also worked with Jason and Elon, and also David McLennan at Meredith. So all 3 good polling organizations that I think could, if we can get one question here, one question there, might illuminate some things from time to time. But we have options as far as, there's going to be a lot of those things done this year.
Right.
They'll probably be doing it anyways, to be honest with you. So if we can help you get something out of it or help on the front end, I think that would be even better.
Yeah, I might add from experience that when maybe just a quick anecdote to explain what I'm about to say. In Alaska, we decided to embrace ranked choice voting, and in anticipation of the ranked choice voting ballot measure, there were a lot of push polls that showed up and that were very confusing, and I was very aware. And so every time I answered the phone, I listened to the whole thing out of curiosity. And even as an English major and somebody who spent time in the communications business, they are remarkably effective. And I even had difficulty sorting out which were reliable information campaigns that were in fact representing the issue. And I think I share that to suggest that having questions or polls that we would want responses from are best attached to a larger architecture of questions, especially if they're coming from a really valid source, as opposed to being real specific to the cybersecurity issue or the poll security issue, because I think that draws either people would go to that poll if they were skeptical of it and they really wanted to skew it, or they would go to that poll with a reluctance to actually participate in it. So I think I would second that notion that any feedback that we would want from voters is probably best attached to a larger poll that would draw that information out.
Well, you all know how hard it is to word a good polling question. So if you want to make that one of your meetings, it probably would take a whole meeting, but certainly that's a good idea.
I mean, rather than reinvent the whole wheel, there are a bunch of polls about elections, quite frankly. I think we could probably just look around too and see if there's already been polling done on this. I mean, MIT does a bunch of it. There's a SPAE, it's the state elections kind of stuff. So there are polls out there. They're not specific to North Carolina, but there are some polls on. I just need to see, I need to look around and see if there are specific questions about election security and technology.
Yeah, that'd be great if you can look into that. I will say, North Carolina is, we are culturally unique in a lot of ways, and every state is different. So it would be good to have some input from North Carolina, especially because we've been, in the midst of gerrymandering and, the Morby Harper. I mean, there have been so many things that have made our state unique.
Right. But I think a good thing about a national poll would be as a benchmark to, because I suspect, and I'm just taking a wild guess here, but I suspect people in North Carolina have more confidence in our election system than maybe nationwide or in some other states. And I think that, that's the kind of statement that might come back and bite me later, because I think if it's true, it's a great thing to let people know that people in North Carolina have confidence in the election system. But then if I'm completely wrong on that, it backfires. So,
well, but even just adding to that, if other questions have been used in different polls, then we don't have to write up our own questions. We know that those questions are pretty good. So that just helps not have to write questions. It's always a great thing.
right. Okay.
Great.
So I think maybe sort of next steps on my end would be, I think Tori would probably be the first person that we would want to talk to, since he has a good state level view of cybersecurity issues. So I will reach out to him, and then maybe we will try to schedule something in early to mid-January on a Thursday afternoon at 4. Is that where we are? I will just say sort of tentatively January the 11th or the 18th, possibly depending on when we can get Tori to talk to us. Actually, do we want to talk to the Board of Elections person first to get an overview of the legal landscape? Would that be good first?
Well, we have, Bob and I have talked about having Paul Cox do a session just to be recorded to answer some questions about legal changes, because there have been some election laws that have been stayed by the courts because they're under, and it's very confusing. Is 749 and 747, are they in, are they, are they there? Are they not there? That kind of thing. So, yeah, we can absolutely get Paul. We're going to try to do it because it'd be hard to get the whole commission, 70 people to be on a Zoom at the same time, but we will do a recording of it. So we'll make that kind of a commission-wide meeting with Paul. But if there are questions that you want to make sure that the moderator asks him related to this committee, then definitely we'll send those in. And Bob and I will be in touch about when we can get him scheduled, because yeah, he's great. He's such a nice guy too. To be in the middle of elections. But we'll definitely get, yeah, Paul Cox is his name. He's the general counsel. So he understands the legal framework really well.
Right. Okay, well, what I can do, I can also, I've got links somewhere to the North Carolina Code, the general statutes. And I can send those out to this group. And contact Tori. And I'm also just going to send out a general as part of that. As you sit and you think about issues that come up related to this group that you would like to investigate, sort of drop them on me and I'll organize all that into future meetings and we'll go from there.
Great.
Great.
And
Anybody?
I'm super interested in making myself a little bit smarter so that I can contribute. So if folks, I see the 2 notes that Mary Jo put into the chat, so I've saved those links. But if there are other read aheads that anybody feels like would be worthwhile, either specific to our landscape in North Carolina or nationally, I would really welcome that as we go between meetings. So I don't know if we can use that Google Drive as a repository for recommended topics, or if you know, some of you with an academic background who have a reading list that you think would be helpful, I would certainly welcome that.
That'd be great. There actually was a
Yeah.
there was a book that we sent out, and I can't remember, it's something about election administration, the future of election administration. Mary Jo, you may know which one that is.
Yeah, just totally blanking, but yes.
I know. You know what it is.
You know what it is.
But that's, you know, you don't have to buy a book because it's like 277 pages or something. But if you are totally into it, you can do that. And then there are other, obviously the general statutes, important to know what we do now. And yeah, Mary Jo, if you can, and I think, you know, Michael Bitzer is going to send out some ideas. Michael and Martha and Chris, who are our 3 academic steering committee members. We'll send out some things, and do look in the cyber committee folder in the Google Drive, because we'll try to put the resources there. Maybe I'll make a sheet that says resources.
And I have some contacts and some I know people at organizations that do this. There's a great nonprofit called Voter Verified that does
love it.
cyber. Okay.
Yes.
And the MIT, I had forgotten about them. MIT has a great election data collection. I mean, they have these great data archives. So
yeah, MIT Elections Lab,
right.
verified voting. There's a bunch of them that you can just go look up, and there's so much information out there on elections. It's Martha's book. I think we're talking about Help America Vote, the Limits of Election Reform. Yeah, don't tell her I didn't know that. She'll
Your
understand.
secret's safe with me.
But there's a Kathleen Hale book. I'll put some of them out there for you.
Great.
Okay.
Super.
Good. And I will follow up with a meeting date. And we'll have Rachel set it up again.
Good. Thank you.
Excellent.
Great.
All right. Everybody
Any
have a
last-
great holiday.
Yeah. Happy holiday. Any last questions from anybody?
No.
Okay, great.
All right. Nice seeing
All
everybody.
right, Steve, well done. And we'll send the link to the recording so that folks who didn't, if you want to listen again, or folks who weren't here can hear it.
Right. Excellent. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Be well.
Happy holidays.
You as well.
Yeah.